Good morning. It's Tuesday morning, and we're going to read beginning in chapter 2, verse 15 to the end of the chapter, to verse 21. We ourselves are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners, yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we also have believed in Christ Jesus in order to be justified by faith in Christ and not by works of the law. Because by works of the law no one will be justified. But if in our endeavor to be justified in Christ we too were found to be sinners, is Christ then a servant of sin? Certainly not. For if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. For through the law I died to the law, so that I might live to God. And I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Spirit, in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. Paul says a lot of things in this little bit of Galatians, and what he says about we're not justified by works of the law, by doing all the things that the law prescribes, not eating shellfish and not working on the Sabbath and all those laws, right? Those won't ultimately justify us. It's faith in Christ that justifies us, he says. Well, Martin Luther picked up on that and equated where Paul says works of the law with the requirements of the Roman Catholic Church. And went to town, had a great career, a great run. And many people, and probably many Lutherans, are taught church history the way I was taught it, that it's, Paul said some things, and then 400 years later, Augustine kind of systematized those things, and then 1,000 years after Augustine, Luther is born, and he rediscovered what Paul meant and what Augustine meant, and all that had come in between was just sinful error. And that is as poor a church history as you can find anywhere, but that's the way it's taught to a lot of Protestants, unless you bother to actually read stuff. And I'm not going to go into all of that. I just want to say that because it needs to be said. What Paul says here is that we're justified by faith, not by our works. And so if we're trying to live by the law, we're not going to be able to succeed in being justified. He says he's been crucified with Christ, and that he doesn't live anymore. Christ lives in me. So the life that he lives by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. What I want you to do when you read this and ponder this is not read it as some sort of transactional affair where, you're a sinner and Christ had to pay somebody to get you to move from sinner to not sinner column, like a transaction on a spreadsheet. That is not what's going on. Jesus dies for us. It's not really in place of us. He died so we don't have to kind of thing. It's more, he took the consequences, not the punishment, but the consequences of our sin, which is death, and overcame that. He said, death, no problem, and rose from the dead. And so saved us, but in a different way from the way that we typically think of it. So ponder that today. I hope that it makes sense, and if not, we'll try again tomorrow. For the meantime, I hope that you have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.